Welcome to the Super Subs with
Andrew.
and Harry, where we talk about anything and everything related to football. This week's episode is going to be on our Positions Explained series again. We are on the third part of our Positions Explained series called What is a Midfielder? So we've gone through the goalkeeper, we've gone through the defenders, and now we're on the midfield. So as the name suggests, you can probably guess that a midfielder in football or soccer plays in the middle part of the pitch. And that's the very basic definition. Andrew's going to go into a little bit deeper of a definition of what a midfielder is. So if you haven't listened to the goalkeeper or the defender episodes or those pods yet, those are pods 11 and 12. Please go back, listen or watch those previous two episodes. They're going to give you a good basic understanding of what those positions are. Or if you're familiar with those positions, maybe they'll unlock a few key items that you didn't know about those positions before, just to clarify some misconceptions or knowledge that you wanted to learn. Before we dive into it, though, Andrew, what are you sipping on today?
We are recording on a Sunday morning here in the Bay Area, and I am drinking a cup of coffee, and
Yes.
I'm sure this is not going to be the last. I definitely have a little bit of a coffee problem. What do you got going this morning, Harry?
I've got a cup of coffee. I know exactly where you are with the coffee problem. My go-to drink actually every morning is, and some people, I don't know if this is divisive or not, or some people don't like or do like this, but I really enjoy an espresso tonic. So have you had one, Andrew?
I have actually. You made me one right before a United game one early morning, and it was delicious.
I'm pretty sure I have to make one every single time, United play, because that morning we won 3-1 against Arsenal. So, it's the tonic to our problems of winning or losing. But no, in all seriousness, it's an espresso shot with tonic water and like over ice. And a lot of people think, oh my God, mixing tonic water and coffee, is that weird? Is that not weird? But it's actually pretty delicious because it's almost like a cocktail without the alcohol, right? So, very, very delicious. If you haven't tried it out, I would recommend trying it. So that's my go-to morning drink. But yeah, we are absolutely both coffee addicts. I know in the UK, a lot of tea drinking. How often do you drink tea usually, Andrew? Is it like very rarely, a little bit, like here or there?
I would say in the fall and winter and even into the spring, I'm drinking tea fairly regularly at night, like after dinner, primarily an herbal tea. Like I love peppermint, chamomile, definitely in the afternoon sometimes if I'm feeling like I want a little bit of a boost, but not too much. I'll do some like green jasmine or occasionally some Earl Grey. But yeah, I do really enjoy tea, but nothing beats the taste of coffee. That is for sure.
Yeah, and one thing, I feel like we should drink tea. That's why I brought it up on the pod to honor our, English compatriots. But I feel like tea is something I don't drink too often unless I'm in the mood to kind of chill and relax a little bit more. I feel like coffee, maybe that's a good definition of Americans versus, English or British people. It's like Americans drink coffee, they're all hyped up and loud all the time, and English people are a lot more mellow and chill and smooth and very, their tone is even tempered. And so maybe that's a good parallel. But into the midfielder. So let's go into today's episode of Positions Explained. What is a midfielder? Dun, 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 dun. One of these days, we're going to put music there. But until then, I'm just going to keep humming that. So Andrew, why don't we go directly into it? Let's talk about why a midfielder is important in the team. Just give us the overall basics of what a midfielder is, a little bit longer than what I described before, and then go into the start off with the specific positions of the midfielder. So love to hear kind of what a midfielder is in general.
Sure. Yeah. So we'll kick it off just with the definition, like you said. So essentially, this position, as the namesake goes, is playing mostly in the middle portion of the field. So they have a pretty unique role or duty that involves assisting the forwards while also helping out in the defense. And later on in the pod, we'll break down those specific roles within the midfield that specifically do those things. You've got attacking, you've got defending, people on the flanks and the wings. But one of the most important aspects of the position is helping to move the ball between the defense up to the offense and facilitating those goal scoring opportunities. So a lot of the play of the game involves passing, maintaining possession, and it is one of the most active positions on the field. So I always loved that position growing up. I love to run. I played on the left wing, but primarily on the right. And I just loved going up and down the field. So these guys are definitely some of the most athletic. I mean, granted, if you're playing professional soccer, you're going to be in fantastic shape. But
no matter what position you're in. Yeah.
No matter what the position. But if you look at the heat maps on, after games, a lot of the time the midfielders are the ones that are putting in the most mileage. So
absolutely.
To get specific, though, we'll dive in. So there is a position called a center mid. So center or central midfielders are players whose role is divided into mostly equally between attacking and defense. So they're going to control the play in and around the center of the pitch. So they will be doing this defensively. They will be doing this offensively. These players try to pass the ball to the team's attacking midfielders and forwards and help the attackers make runs into the opposition's penalty area. So 18-yard box, 6-yard box. And they'll even attempt shots themselves. So it's not, unheard of. If you get a look at goal, you're gonna take that shot. And they provide secondary support to attackers, both in and out of possession. So, and there's a lot of like box to box play, which we talk about. So going from your defense, your 18-yard box, all the way up to the opposing team's offense as well. So that's a little bit of a breakdown on the definition and the center mid, but there are a lot more positions within the midfield. So Harry, what is a wide midfielder? Can you explain to the listeners a little bit more about what that role entails?
Yeah, so a wide midfielder is, instead of playing in the center, and if you listen to our last podcast on defenders, you'll notice that there are center backs as well as full backs, and center backs, much like the center mid position, are people that play in the center of defense, and center mid is people that play in the center of midfield and connect the play, like Andrew said, between defense and attack. A wide midfielder plays on the sides usually. So if you're in midfield but you play in wide midfield, you usually are closer to the touch lines or the boundary lines of either side of the field. So it provides width in that midfield. It actually provides an outlet for your fullbacks or your defenders. So let's say like Andrew said, he played on the right wing or the right side of the pitch or the field. If his defender, his right side, right back defender was in trouble and needed someone to pass to, Andrew could be as close to his defender to actually allow for someone to pass to. So he could be another outlet to pass to, and then he could carry the ball up the line. So you provide a little bit of cover for your defenders, as well as you can cross the ball. So if you don't know the terminology cross, it just means taking the ball and pretty much swinging in it's not really a pass to a certain person. It can be, but it's more so a pass to an area inside, usually the 18-yard box, like Andrew was talking about, for someone to get a shot off, or usually another final pass for the shot. So a cross is usually leads to a goal opportunity or a goal itself. And then usually a wide midfielder, they run a lot because they run up and down the field on the side. So it's a very, all midfielders are very physical positions, but especially the wide midfielders, especially because they have to track up the field and then they have to track back. And tracking just means running and making sure you know what position you're in and being aware of your own position in respect to other people's position. You have to track back to make sure that you defend as well for a wide midfielder, just to have that solid defense when you don't have the ball. So I'm going to go on to, I think that's a perfect segue, go on to the defensive midfielder. So there are midfielders that are specifically tasked to defending and attacking. And I think Andrew had a very good summary. The center mid, the role is divided mostly equally between attacking and defending, but some teams choose to have specific people in those roles and split those two parts of the role into two people. So if you have a center mid, you can either task them to both attack and defend, or you can have something called a defensive mid and an attacking mid split up into two people so they can focus solely on either defending or either attacking. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the defensive mid. So defensive midfielders are midfield players that focus on protecting their own team's goal instead of just driving the ball forward and playing it to an attacking player. So these players might either defend a zone or defend certain people, specific people that are on the opposing team from being able to get the ball. And an example of a player that's really good nowadays at doing this is a player called Casemiro on Manchester United, the team that Andrew and I support. And he is really good at intercepting the ball, reading the play, and knowing where the ball is going to go and being able to get there and pass it forward and out of the danger zone before it can get to pretty much our side of the goal and have a goal scoring opportunity for the other team. So that's a defensive midfielder. I'm going to talk about an attacking midfielder and then turn it over to Andrew for the last position. So the attacking midfielder is the opposite pretty much. So they don't really, they do defend a little bit, but not nearly as much as a defensive midfielder. Their main priority is to be an advanced playmaker. So pretty much when they get the ball, they're probably already over the halfway line or deep into the opponent's side of the field or the pitch, and then they can spot either the final pass or spread it out to the wings or pretty much carry it far enough so that they can take a shot off, and then maybe the rebound, the forward hits in or anything like that. So they definitely dictate the play from right behind the forwards, and we're actually going to talk about what a forward is in our next pod episode on Positions Explained. But an attacking midfielder is that link right between the center of the midfield and then the forward. So pretty much this is a very specialized position. They have to have a lot of creativity, a lot of technicality, be able to shoot from range because usually they're not in the goal box all the time. They're usually outside. So if they want to get a shot off, they have to have really good shooting technique as well. So this is a very versatile position that can play all kinds of areas. So Andrew, our last midfield position that's more specialized, talk about what that is and what it looks like today.
So this position is called the winger. You can also have inverted wingers. They are going to be the widest attacking players on the pitch. So as you said earlier, with some of the other positions, they're going to be running up and down the touch lines on either side of the pitch, doing a lot of running. They're going to be taking on the opposition's defenders. So really pressing hard if they lose the ball, and really trying to force turnovers. And after those turnovers, hopefully getting possession and providing crosses into the box. So really putting the ball into the area in order for their own attacking players to get, like you said, Harry, get a shot off, get a second touch, lay it off to another player, or get a header towards the goal. So those crosses into the box are going to be really key. And you definitely need players on these sides of the pitch that have a really good, almost depth perception, right? To be able to put that ball into that area. You see a lot of balls go too far, too short. So this is definitely a pretty specialized position. And they are going to try to meet crosses from the opposite wing as well. So be available if the opposite winger is going to switch the play. So switching the play is basically when a player on one side of the field crosses it over to the other side of the field. And it's a great way to shift play really quickly and totally throw the defense off by totally shifting where the ball is being played and creating space. And oftentimes they're some of the fastest players on the pitch because they need to be able to make those runs really quickly to both defend and retrieve the ball, but also break and push forward really quickly.
Exactly.
So I think this is a great lead in to our next topic of this pod, which is famous midfielders. So
yes, let's get into it.
It is so hard. We were doing the prep for this and I was trying to think of all the famous midfielders I know and doing research, and there are just so many. I mean, no doubt we were leaving people out, but we'll just get into it. So I'll start it off with Zinedine Zidane. Really famous French player. He is known for that 2006 World Cup headbutt in the finals, and he headbutted Materazzi for Italy. That's still one of the most shocking moments. I remember seeing it live, and yeah, it's still hard to comprehend what exactly was said. Still remains up to debate, but
I think something about his sister apparently. But it's all hearsay, obviously. You know, as the listener, you can Google on your own. Google Zinedine Zidane headbutt.
Yeah.
But if something was said about my family, I would understand. Let's just say we don't condone violence here on the Super Subs.
We do not. No. Thank you for that clarification, Harry. But in all seriousness, he played a lot of his career at Real Madrid. Was an absolutely fantastic midfield player. Yeah. He's gone on since to become a really great coach. He's coached Real Madrid. Right now, he's kind of in between jobs, from my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong, Harry. He's kind of holding out for that perfect job for him. He's been approached by different clubs and even national teams, but I think he's maybe hoping for something in the French variety.
Yeah.
But really fantastic player. Another player who might even be playing at this very moment right now. I think he started today on the bench, but Kevin De Bruyne. So he is a Belgian midfielder that plays for Manchester City in England. Prior to that, he played for Wolfsburg in Germany in the Bundesliga. Yeah. And then prior to that, I think he played for Chelsea, right?
He did play for Chelsea, but he was one of those players that was really, really talented, but couldn't break into the team consistently or be used in a way that Pep Guardiola, who's the coach of Manchester City, uses him so successfully today. So I think he didn't reach the heights that he could have at Chelsea that he does today at City.
Yeah. And he's really well known for just his pinpoint precision with his passing.
So good.
And his crossing, phenomenal touch. He's also known to crack in some absolutely stunning goals. Can be good on set pieces as well. He's really a very, very talented, arguably one of the best in the world right now at what he does. Two other guys that are, of course, we cannot not mention are Xavi and Andres Iniesta, both who did their play. What made them famous was their time at Barcelona. Really fantastic players. Just their vision, their control, their ability to both defend and attack, set up their teammates. They were part of those really iconic Barcelona teams from that era. With Gerrard Piqué finally retiring, we're kind of seeing this real change of the guard with Barcelona. But I think they're in good hands because they're actually being coached by Xavi. And they're known to play Xavi ball, and they are atop the Spanish La Liga at the moment. So they've been having really good success, and they've got a whole host of amazing young talent. Another really notable, of course, hand of God, Diego Maradona, rest in peace. Absolutely amazing Argentinian player who was really well known and could make these amazing runs, for the time and the place. He could take it box to box, outplay almost anyone. He had this big flowing black hair. Later in his life when he retired, he was into his partying and all sorts of things. Yep. And, but he was definitely a character and had that hand of God, which if you don't know, jumped up for a ball and got a hand to it. Yeah. And I don't believe it was called as a handball, right?
Well, that's the controversy. Exactly. So
exactly.
If it was handball, then it wouldn't have been a hand of God, but it was one of those moments where it's like people refer to it because, it's a divine moment that I think it was a goal that he scored with his hand because, because no one saw it, but also Maradona was one of the most famous players in the world, and he's probably one of the all-time greats in football history. So there was a little bit of that, and then a little bit of luck. Some people didn't see it. There's no video action replay back in the 1980s.
Yeah.
So obviously a little bit lucky as well.
Exactly. And I will round out my list with Frank Lampard, who, for those that watch the Premier League in current day, he was most recently the coach of Everton. Everton have a classic club, have really fallen on hard luck, and he was sacked, within the past week or two. So pretty recently. But he was most notable for his time playing at Chelsea Football Club in London. Chelsea at the time won a lot of Premier League titles and did really well in Europe. He was really well known for his play in the middle of the field. Great on free kicks as well. And just a really, really tenacious player. Didn't back down. Was his vision especially was absolutely incredible. And it's a shame that he hasn't got his footing yet in coaching, but I know that eventually he will. And just wasn't his time. So Harry, that we have such a long list and there are so many more, but do you have any midfielders in mind that are famous or that really have special characteristics that stand out to you?
Yeah, I'll go through a few names, and if you're listening or watching, we'll have these in the description so you can search these up later. And I know a lot of the terminology that Andrew and I are throwing around are probably unfamiliar if you're getting into football or soccer. So if there's anything that you don't necessarily recognize, definitely have it as an opportunity to maybe look up some information, but we will provide as much background information on this pod as we can so that you feel comfortable with what you're hearing. But one midfielder that comes to mind for me is Paul Scholes. He's actually one of the people or midfielders that a lot of other players talk about as being one of the greatest midfielders of all time. So there's a lot of fans that enjoy watching Paul Scholes, but when other players talk about you as one of the best players of all time, you're good. So this guy played for Manchester United for years and years and years. He was part of pretty much this group of players called the Class of 92. So in 1992, a group of young players broke from the academy, and the academy is a concept we'll talk about. It's pretty much young players, usually under the age of 18 or 19, playing football in an academy setting. So they're growing up and being developed physically, being developed tactically by the club since the age of maybe 5, 6, 7, 8. They get recruited and signed to a contract. And then they grow up in this club. So he broke into the first team around when he was 16, 17, 18, 19, etc. And his vision, just the way that he struck the ball from midfield, he could make runs, he could make passes, he can control the play from the middle. He's very composed on the ball, just all around very, very, very dynamic midfielder. Steven Gerrard is another midfielder. He played for Liverpool for years and years, also managed in the Premier League Aston Villa. There's another club called Aston Villa that he managed, but he was pretty much a maestro in midfield. So he's this very elegant figure. He could run with the ball very gracefully. He could evade defenders on the other team and take a really nice shot off or set up the play really well. So he was well known in pretty much England for being one of the greatest midfielders of the Premier League in England. But one of the most notable things about his career is he never won a Premier League trophy or title. So his team, Liverpool, when he was playing for Liverpool for years, decades or more, they actually never got first place in the Premier League. And that's one of the things when you talk about players, when you start to research more and more players, the greats versus the people that were really excellent and really good, the pretty much the greatest of all time players that you'll see on lists and things like that are the players that have won all of the accolades that there are to win, whether it's the World Cup, whether it's the leagues that they've been performing in, that the titles and the trophies of getting the first place in that league and etc. So you can be considered fantastic, but if you haven't won everything, there's almost this, you don't have that sheen of a player that has won everything. And Lionel Messi obviously is a GOAT because he's won everything there is to win pretty much in football. So I'm going to speed through the rest of my list. We have Andreas Pirlo. He's an Italian midfielder. He also controls play from a lot deeper. So you can think of him as a central midfielder, but he pretty much sits back a little bit more and pings balls out. He's almost like a cannon where he can find you from distance and just ping a ball to you really, really just a dime, and then it gets to your foot, and then you could progress the play from there. Modric, who is a player that plays for Real Madrid. He actually won the Ballon d'Or. We talked about this award in our last episode. It's the best footballer in a specific calendar year, but he also plays in central midfield. His passing is incredible, and you'll see a pattern with all these players that we're talking about, Andrew and I are talking about. Their passing is always fantastic. If you play in midfield, you have to have a very high passing percentage because you're the one, obviously the definition of a midfielder is you're linking the ball from the defense to the forward line. So if you don't pass with high accuracy, or if your pass doesn't get there, then the ball's turned over and then you have to defend, and then it pretty much doesn't bode too well for your team. So all of these players that we're talking about can pass just to an insane degree. Toni Kroos, who is a German player, also plays for Real Madrid, also has an insane free kick. Passing range is incredible. And then finally, David Beckham. Very recognizable name, household icon, even a sex symbol to a lot of people.
This is true.
This is true, right? A lot of girls will know the name David Beckham. Oh my God, it's David Beckham. But only because of his looks. But there's a side of his game that's very underrated. And I think people don't know this because it was overshadowed by him modeling or doing all of these social media, before social media was even around, magazine shoots and doing this and that. But his crossing ability, and we talked a little bit about crossing, sending a ball into a certain area, was insane. There's this goal that he played for. So David Beckham played for Manchester United as well as Real Madrid. When he played for Real Madrid, he played with Ronaldo, so not Cristiano Ronaldo, who a lot of younger people know today with the Sioux, but the Ronaldo from Brazil, R9. He's known as R9, but he played this ball. David Beckham played this ball from almost the midfield line. So imagine the middle of the pitch, and he played just an in-swing ball. And when we say in-swing, we mean with Beckham's right foot, it goes inward towards the goal, not outward. So it's there. We'll get into this terminology a little bit later, but he played a ball all the way there, and it just caressed perfectly onto, I believe, either Ronaldo's head or foot and just volleyed it in. He just put it into the goal. But David Beckham is one of those special players that can, if you tell him to put it anywhere on the pitch, no matter where he is, he'll pass that ball there. And it just curves so nicely. And that's why I think his free kicks are so iconic as well, is because they curve just so gracefully. So those were all the players that Andrew and I wanted to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about the evolution of midfielders now. So this is our last section. We're going to speed through this one. So Andrew, talk a little bit about attacking midfielders. So what is maybe not necessarily the history of an attacking midfielder, but how did it evolve and what is it today as we know it?
Yeah, attacking midfielders. So, whether it's dropping into a hole or, a place of space on the field to drag the central defenders out of that space, or, running into the box with a late run to get onto the end of a cross. The function of the attacking midfielder has really always been able to make things happen in front of goal by whatever means necessary. So after the turn of the century, the attacking midfielder began to become more and more clearly outlined with tactical systems. So the 4-4-2, so 4 in the back, 4 in front of them, and 2 up top, gave way to a 4-2-3-1, which sounds like a lot of numbers. If you're just starting out with the game, sounds like a lot of gibberish, but it's basically the way that the team is lining up from the back, from the goal, all the way up to the forward. So in that system, for the first time on paper, really, it became centralized around a proficient nucleus of the midfield. So really putting a lot of emphasis on the midfield and the ability for specialized midfielders to either defend or, in this case, attack and produce goal threats, score goals, set up goals in the penalty box, things like that. So now that there's an attacking midfielder, which is a role in and of itself separate from the central midfielder, which is, the attacking midfielder is essentially being instructed, hey, I want you to be a striker, but drop a little bit deeper. So I want you to be producing goals, being a threat, but also when it's time to defend, drop back a little bit, help us defend, help us build plays. And it's really led into this really, I'll say, beautiful, sexy version of football where you've got guys like Mesut Ozil of Real Madrid and Wesley Sneijder of Inter, who are suddenly these most beautiful players of the game because they were able to create these flowing attacks from a little bit deeper than a traditional striker and make their way forward and score amazing goals. So that's a little bit of the evolution of the attacking midfielder. And basically, we were talking about this earlier, Harry, things have just gotten more advanced, more specialized.
Yep.
And tactics and football IQ has just gotten more sophisticated. So I think that's what has led to the high level of the game that we see it today. It's no longer as simple as it once was. But speaking of one of those kind of evolutionized roles and a real specialty role, Harry, can you talk us through what a defensive mid is and how that differs from the attacking mid?
Yeah, like Andrew said, these positions were never specialized before. Before, it used to just be a midfielder. If you played in the middle of the pitch or the middle of the field, your job was just to link play, receive the ball, and then get to the ball to the attacker so they could score on goal. Simple as that, right? But now tactics are a lot smarter, and you have to have specialized positions, especially for certain teams that maybe tend to swarm your midfield or don't give you time and space to pass the ball to your attackers. You have to have some kind of interchange in play. So the defensive midfielder was born out of actually pretty much the back line. We talked about the defense last episode in our Positions Explained episode on defenders. What is a defender? So it was born out of the center back position, and I'm not going to explain too much on the center back. Please refer back to our previous episode. The center backs realized sometimes when they're defending, they need to send one of their center backs up a little bit further, pretty much up the field a little bit, to defend higher so they could prevent the attack from even starting in the first place. Because if you can prevent an attack from starting in the first place, you don't have to pretty much have these attacking players running full pelt, full speed at you with the ball, and then have to usher them or predict which way they're going to go. You can prevent the ball from even getting close to your goal and then just pass it out. So that was the birth of the defensive midfielder, where certain defenders realized, oh my God, let me just defend a little bit higher and then get the ball and then pass it out. So that's really the definition of a defensive midfielder. But it was never an official part of the midfield. It was always defenders doing this pretty much ragtag job on their own, thinking that they need to do these things. And even midfielders at a time did this. So one example is Roy Keane. Roy Keane was the captain of Manchester United for a long, long time. He's what's called a box-to-box midfielder, like Andrew referred to earlier in this episode. So box-to-box midfielders are midfielders that pretty much their zone is they'll play from the defending box, so your own 18-yard box all the way to the opposing team's 18-yard box, and you have free reign to do pretty much what you need to in those positions. So Roy Keane will run all the way back and defend or make a tackle or stop the play from happening when the opponents have the ball, pretty much. But he was never tasked specifically as defensive midfielder. So I would say the turning point of a defensive midfielder, when that really actually came to fruition, was a player by the name of Makelele in 2003. So this player actually came to Chelsea, I believe, under Jose Mourinho, and actually played specifically in the defensive midfielder position because Mourinho, who was the coach and manager of Chelsea at the time, wanted this French player to specifically just sit in front of the back line and just defend the ball and just win the ball back. So pretty much as a defensive midfielder, your whole role is win the ball back, pass the ball up to your attacking players so they can score a goal. You're pretty much like the cleanup crew. You're what's called a quote-unquote destroyer. So that's what the defensive midfielder is. And then the modern defensive midfielder nowadays, we fast forward 20 years from 2003, we're in 2023 now. The modern defensive midfielder is tasked not just with winning the ball back, but actually driving the ball forward. So carrying the ball, so running with the ball, and then finding that key pass as well, just to keep the attack going. So you have to be not just smart at intercepting the ball, but also be really aware and have your passing be really proficient so that you can find attacking players and have pretty much a good stream of play going on. So that's the defensive midfielder. Let's end, Andrew, on just a little bit about the physicality of the midfielders in general. So I'd love to hear more about how did midfielders or the center mids or whatever midfielders, how did they physically evolve? Was there any kind of evolution? Are players running the same amount as they are today as they were before? What can you tell the listener a little bit about that?
Definitely. And sidebar, when you talked about Claude Makélélé, it made me remember I actually had his autograph on
No way.
Chelsea jersey that I had as a middle schooler. So Chelsea came on a summer tour and played at Stanford University against, I believe it was LA Galaxy. Yeah. And I tried so hard. I was like there early, yelling at the guys on the field, trying to get Lampard or Terry or one of these guys to get me, or Drogba to get me an autograph. And it was only Claude Makélélé that took the time to sign my jersey. So
he destroyed your jersey. What a destroyer. I'm just kidding. That's impressive, though. Seriously, one of the first defined defensive midfielders of the game.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if I still have that jersey somewhere. I hope I didn't get rid of it. It's probably somewhere. But all that aside, when we think about the physical evolution, central midfielders are really the link between defense and attack. And they literally strengthen the team in its core and are characterized by constantly being in position to receive and pass the ball. So, aside from running a performance, there's a lot of stats that show, an increase in physicality as well. So, whether it's the amount of passing, whether it's the amount of tackles won, things like that. So, as in all sports, players have really evolved in, the kind of training that they're doing, their cardio strength, their physical strength. So you see a lot of, really fast guys in the midfield and the center mid, but also really physical as well. The game has just increased. The physical demands have increased. And the modern central midfielder really just stands out due to the high total distance covered and the amount of explosive sprints. So it's not just like running a marathon, right? It's also those quick sprints, and there's a lot of those quick sprints. The role is really just a combination of being able to create chances in the attack and being a real leader in the middle of the field, and also helping out in the defense as well. So, overall, these guys and ladies are just beasts now. The training that goes in, the physicality, they're stronger, they're faster, they're able to run for longer and do faster sprints. It's really just impressive. And there's all sorts of stats we could get into, but I'll just leave it at that. Harry, any closing thoughts on midfielders, what we see today, things to look out for?
Yeah, I think just to cap on the physical evolution, I think just to give the listener a little bit more context as well. So football used to be a game of hoof it up to the forward and see if they can score. That used to be the strategy. But nowadays it's a lot more well thought out, and there's a lot more players playing in the midfield, which means the physicality has had to increase a lot. So when Andrew talks about explosive sprints, it almost tripled over the course of 10 years, the amount of explosive sprints that these midfielders would have to do. So they're not just waltzing around the middle of the field waiting for the ball to be passed to them. They have to run after the ball and really chase after it. And actually, the amount of passing that these midfielders have really increased as well, up to 10 times as many passes in 10 years and up to 4 times as many short passes in the same amount of years as well. And that's because they are seen as more of a pivotal character in the middle of the field more and more and more, because it's not just hoofing the ball up. If you think about, if you were continuing to just play the ball over the line as far as you could, just to hopefully hope that someone can cherry pick and score a goal, you're not using your midfielders at all. But we see a continued use of these midfielders because they're just so good at passing the ball and progressing the ball up the field that we're seeing more passes, more sprints, more distance covered, things like that. And I think that's important because as a footballer, as a soccer player, you have to be even more fit nowadays to play the midfield position than you did before. And that's something interesting to think about, especially as a fan or listener, not just watching, but if you want to play the sport. Let's say if you want to get out, join your local Sunday league or join your local weeknight league and actually play a position. What position do you want to play, right? And we'll actually have an episode talking about positions that suit you more and what you feel like you might be good at. But if you feel like you want to get into football or soccer as a player, you want to think about how much you need to run too, and the physicality. And obviously, we're not professionals. The people that we know that play regularly are mostly not professionals, and you're not going to run nearly the same amount of distance as these professional players. But there is some parallels in that if you are in the midfield, you're probably going to be running more than everyone else. So, closing thoughts, the midfield players are incredibly important, especially nowadays. When you look at a football match, everything's mainly played in the midfield nowadays. It's a battle. It's won, lost, turnovers, some of the most beautiful attacking plays happening with midfielders starting off that play. So if I were to say anything about midfielders is you can take a look at our list or search some that midfielders today that are really, really at the top of their game and just watch some highlights, watch how they pass, pretty much take a look at where they position their bodies. And it's just really important to how the team ticks. It's like they're like a metronome, tick, 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 because they keep the team running, and without them, pretty much the team falls apart because there's no link between the attack and defense. And that's the main thought to have as a listener. Andrew, any final thoughts from yourself in terms of a midfielder before we close?
Yeah, like you said, the role has really evolved, and if you're new to the game and new to supporting and new to watching the game, really keep an eye out for those guys or gals in the middle of the field, on those wings, the ones that are doing those advanced runs. So, yeah, they're a lot of fun, and you can really see the full breadth and gain a full appreciation for how much those professional athletes are running. I haven't played the game in a little while, and there's no way I can keep up with some of these men and women that are playing in the midfield. So, yeah, a lot of respect.
All right, so we're going to close out this episode of the Super Subs. That was Positions Explained, what is a midfielder. So next episode, please don't miss out. We're going to go over what is a forward and finish out our basic series, because there are pretty much 4 types of positions: goalkeeper, defender, midfielder, and forward. And then from there on, we're going to go into maybe some more of the specifics, but we will widen out, talk a little bit about, you hear these numbers, 4-3-3, 4-1-3-2, whatever. All those numbers, we're going to explain those just a little bit, just so you get a basic understanding of what we're talking about. But that was today's episode of the Super Subs with
Andrew
and Harry. Don't miss our next episode. Definitely follow us on all the socials. If you haven't rated us yet, if you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Music, all the podcast platforms, or watching us, seeing our faces on YouTube, definitely give us a like or a thumbs up or follow. Definitely affects our content, and we can keep providing content that you as a listener enjoy specifically. So definitely listen to the next one, follow us, but we're subbing out for now. Catch you on the next one.